Hello everyone and welcome to the Anxiety Relief Summit. I am your host, Monika Polemicos, and today we are showcasing a wonderful complementary therapist. That's what we aim to do during this Anxiety Relief Summit, to really bring forward and help you overcome and release anxiety for good. And so today we are joined by the lovely Gamze Cassandra Evren. And so Gamze is the founder of Inner Circle Healing in Sydney, and Gamze has an extensive history and experience in systemic family constellations with a professional clinical hypnotherapy, advanced Neuro-Trance psychotherapy as well. So Gamze has over 2 decades worth of experience, so we're in for a treat today, and offers lasting and empowering results through her integrated approach of inner circle healing system. And her tailor-made sessions and programs are designed to transform each individual by clearing their path from anxiety and stress, as well as other forms of obstacles in as little as 8 weeks. So she does this to help women to overcome their persistent anxiety successfully, both at the subconscious and conscious levels, as well as energetic and systemic levels. And as a result, not only are they free from these problems for good, but they can also fully end the systemic cycle of passing down to their children. And it's the ultimate win-win for both her clients and her generations to come. So we'd like to welcome Gamze. Gamze is also an author and contributor to the Anxiety Relief Handbook, and is a trusted complementary and allied health professional. So welcome, Gamze. So good to have you here.
Thank you, Monika. It's lovely to be here. Sounds so exciting, right?
Yes. Well, I am particularly excited to be interviewing you today because I find family constellations something that's really fascinating. It absolutely fascinates me. And I've had a personal experience, actually many sessions with coaches and therapists using family systems and family constellations work, and I've found them to be freeing, beneficial, and really, really effective. So, hence my excitement to share all of your good knowledge and tools with our listeners today.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
So let's just jump straight in, because I know that you have had a personal history with anxiety, and also a very early experience of family constellations as well. Can you share with us a bit about that?
Yeah, certainly. That was a bit unusual, actually. Okay, so I always felt anxious. It was really crazy that I had no sleep, not proper sleep, or I wasn't feeling secure. I wasn't many things, and yet within all those stuff, I knew that there was another way out. And I was just a baby, and then I grew up, and there were things that I found out later. But when I go back, the first time I experienced it, I was 9 years old. It's not the first time that I experienced anxiety, but with the constellations, I was alone in the house as usual because my parents were working till very late. And I felt, again, extremely anxious. I wasn't feeling safe. I felt as if something's bad going to happen to me and something's bad going to happen to my family. I always had this fear of losing them, and it was entangled with many other emotions, many other thoughts too. So at that time, just instinctively, I had this urge just to support me, just to relax me in a way, to invite my grandmother and grandfather into the room. Sounds really weird, right? I'm not like a mystic or anything. I'm not doing any channeling or anything. But what I did was to place our just spare slippers and shoes underneath the armchairs. And as soon as I put them there, I was like, here you are, grandmother, and here you are, grandfather. It's so nice having you. Now I can feel relaxed. You know what? I've been feeling this, and I don't know what's happening. And then there was this intense chat going on. I didn't know. And it went on for a while. And when my mom came in, she was like shocked. What are you doing here? And I was like, Mom, thanks God you're alive. It took me years to find out what happened. I found the cause of my anxiety. It wasn't personal, interestingly. Well, there was a personal stuff, a very deep core personal stuff, but most of them were not personal. And what I experienced was a family constellation, just led by intuition, of a 9-year-old. Yeah.
Wow, fascinating.
Yeah.
And look, I think as a 9-year-old, we might be able to see in other kids as well, them reaching for things to actually comfort them, whether it be a blankie, whether it be a teddy bear, or something or a gift from someone that actually means, is very special to them in their life. So, in some respect, it's really not that far out. It's whatever, that brings comfort in that moment.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So the first thing is just to get relaxed, to be able to relax. But that's the main challenge, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
it never stops. Hello, hello.
Exactly right. Like, I think if you speak to anyone experiencing anxiety, it's like, I just want it to stop. I just want to feel calm. I just want to, I want to feel normal. I get that all the time. I just want to feel normal. Don't even have to feel like that peace and calm and, light. It's just, I just want to feel normal. I just want to get back to this sense of being who I am.
Exactly.
So Gamze, knowing what you know about family systems, what is anxiety? How does it arise? Through the lens of your work and what you've seen and all of your, decades of experience working with people.
Okay. So I'm not going to directly into anxiety from the personal perspective, because I know that all my other colleagues who will be writing this book together, the Anxiety Relief Handbook, are talking about that. I want to talk from the family constellation perspective solely, okay? If it's okay.
Fantastic.
So with the anxiety, it is very interesting. Most of my clients almost always go through other therapies. And then when they come to me, they find that it is not only personal. So just as I said in the beginning, from my own history, anxiety, yes, most of the time it is personal, but not all the time. And it's not only personal most of the time. So the first thing we should know is that anxiety is like an overprotective mother in a way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Always nagging and always checking and always like, as an overprotective mother, just making sure that you're okay. So to be able to check, of course, it's giving all these messages. You have to check that. You have to check. Are you okay? You have to do this. You didn't do this. And you find yourself in constant chaos, right? Because you don't have any peace. So you cannot relax. So this is not the conscious mind. So the first characteristic is that if it was to be just conscious thing, he would have been able to solve it cognitively.
Absolutely.
But subconscious.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
of course. Being aware of it helps, definitely. But the root is not there. So it has to be addressed accordingly. And when I say that, yes, one part of it is personal. So that's the subconscious that can work with many different modalities. And yes, I work with the clinical hypnotherapy. It gives wonderful results. But that's not the whole thing. Usually, there is another part involved, which is the systemic part. So when you look at anxiety, there are different dynamics, which we can have a look at it in the family constellation system. And when you see those, it's like inevitable. It's there and it doesn't belong to you. The real challenge is to find out where it belongs to, then address it accordingly, acknowledging it, and then releasing it to the source. So you can just get yourself out there and you feel like a burden has been lifted off from your shoulders and you feel relaxed for the first time ever. That is an amazing work. And yes, family constellations do that work.
Fantastic. And I guess you can probably see that, sometimes if, you can see that through friends and family, and maybe even like the kids at school where, maybe they've got, the overly protective mum or parent that's like, oh, here's this sounds great, and oh, here, make sure you drink this, and oh, here, you know, who's constantly giving instruction and making, you know, making the child aware of dangers around them.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Cause, right? Because they
yeah,
work for that.
absolutely.
So there is the thing with anxiety, it's always seen as an enemy, but it's not actually an enemy. Universe has many different ways of working the justice out. So what I usually say to my clients is the justice may not always come in one's own lifetime, but it may go on to others' lifetimes, not your lifetimes, but others' lifetimes. So what's not been resolved somewhere back there has to be represented by other generations to find a resolution. And unless you find that, you keep going in the same loop again and again and again, and without most of the time having even a clue why this is not happening. With the anxiety, it's usually the case. If we take out the personal, and if you're still battling with anxiety, that means you have systemic problems.
And I think that's it. I think that's I think what can be so confusing about anxiety as well is that, you know, you're looking for a day-to-day cause or a trigger, or, you know, even as therapists, we are taught to look for the initial sensitizing event.
Yeah.
You know, when did it all start? But often, you know, the clients that we work with, I don't know when it started, it just popped up. We don't have any kind of, you know, definite date or even period of time or anything. It's just a gradual coming on of all of these sensations and feelings.
Exactly.
And so with those individuals, how, or before we get into the how, I really want to kind of, you know, look at, I'm sure people listening to this, right? I'm sure people listening to this are going, you know what, this sounds a bit too woo-woo, this is a little bit out of this world, this is kind of like, you know, come again, you know, if you know, stress and anxiety is coming from my parents or my grandparents or even ancestrally, I get it, right? But for those who are listening and thinking this is a bit far out, there is evidence and there is research that that suggests that stress and anxiety and also trauma can impact generationally. Isn't that right?
Yes, exactly. And in a way, it is very interesting because the founder, Bert Hellinger, the founder of the Family Constellations, in No Ways Without the Ocean book, he says that the phenomenological psychotherapy is in direct opposition to the scientific psychotherapy. So what we experience during constellations, either as a representative or someone who's having their constellation done, is that we perceive and we experience some insights with the experience with our family systems, with our family dynamics, which cannot be repeated in a linear way. And yet scientific researches, the scientific methodology has to be linear. So there is a contradiction there.
Yeah.
And still, because it's such a fascinating subject, there are many researchers out there doing researches on those. And like there is one, let me see, I have it in my notes. There is one done in 2017, and it's on the psychosocial effects of systemic and family constellations. And that research was done by the University of the Reformed Church in Hungary with the collaboration of University of Toronto. That's pretty a recent one, right?
Yeah.
That was directly on family constellation. And what they found was that there are many positive changes found in scores on a broad spectrum of psychopathological symptoms in many areas, including anxiety and depression. So that tells us something. And apart from those, there has been a lot of research done on many different fields, mostly epigenetic fields, neuroscience fields, about how traumas actually can pass on to the generations. And there are a lot of them. The first of them is usually coming from the pioneer Rachel Yehuda. It's a professor in Mount Sinai. Let me see. I don't want to reference it wrong. So that's Mount Sinai School of Medicine in New York. So He's done a lot of researches. If you just go and check the researches, it's mind-blowing. And like most of them shows us that how it actually affects us. He's done the first one, for example, PTSD in Holocaust survivors and their children.
Yes.
And the findings are, wow, really mind-blowing. So he actually showed how descendants of trauma survivors carry the physical and emotional symptoms of traumas they have not directly experienced. So just think about it. Your family or your grandparents or great-grandparents, it can actually go 7 generations back, that's been proven.
Wow.
Are going through something in their lives, some trauma that hasn't been resolved. In the case of Holocaust, it's very obvious, but it doesn't have to be that big. So whatever they go through in their lives, if it's not being resolved timely, it has to be inherited. And we see the effects over and over again. So it's pretty interesting that they found that the epigenetic tags the chemical signals of the cells, which attach to DNA and tell the cell to either activate or silence the specific gene. That I think we heard about those, most of us. Say that, yes, the sequence of DNA itself doesn't change, but the expression does. And that trauma, inherited generational trauma, affects how it's being expressed in the later generations. So whatever they go through, and usually there may be some secrets, even if we don't know, doesn't matter, we energetically receive those imprints.
Well, it sounds like it's not just, energetic, but it's obviously, we're talking about DNA. It's gene expression, energetically, but also, most commonly, I think when you think about the values and the values and the things that do verbally get handed down from generation to generation, in terms of what the family does as a family, what they abide by, what are the rules of the household, of society, of the world. I think those things are probably more openly, you're able to identify that is a system that gets handed down. I guess through this research, we're finding out that it's not just the stories that we tell our kids.
It's not just stories. And the amazing thing is, sometimes we don't get to tell these stories. You may not know your parents. There are people out there who are adopted or who lost their parents. They have no idea about their whole family history, right? They're like cut off. And yet they live the effects. They carry the burdens. And they leave the effects without even knowing where it's coming from. So you may just find yourself battling with anxiety and depression, perhaps. And you may not have an idea, not a logical idea why it's happening. And no matter what you go through, no matter what you do to just overcome this, it may not work. If it's systemic work, it has to be addressed systemically. And the beauty is, if you do that, and if you have any kids, they will have some kids too, right? So you don't only save yourself out of the line, but you save who's coming after you also. So this is the most important part of the family constellation. It's not only for the individual, it's for the whole family system. And what you do, depending on the age, may affect your siblings. It always affects your parents, but the main effect is on you and your later generations. This is really important.
Well, I think that's you've hit the nail on the head in terms of concern as a parent. No parents wants to stuff up their kids, right? No one wants to stuff them up, right? You're always like, how can we not stuff up our children? How can we give them the best? How can we give them the tools? How can we make sure that they're, that we're raising, intelligent, professional human beings? Just, so they're growing up being good and happy. Like that's kind of the basis of existence. We just want them to be happy, right?
That's the normality, right?
Exactly.
That's what we're striving for. Yeah.
And so I'm intrigued to find out a little bit more about, some of maybe the symptoms or symptomology, or even, some of the people that have worked with you, what tends to be their, I guess, their concerns or their pain points, or the reasons why they come to you for that family constellations work, what is it that they simply cannot shake?
Mhm. So it's usually this, I don't know what's happening feeling.
Mm.
It usually comes in patterns, and anxiety comes in patterns, right?
Yeah.
When it's about to come, we know that it's about to happen. So when they come, it's like, I don't know why this is happening, why it keeps happening. I have been to this person, that person, I've done this therapy, that therapy, I've read books, I've read all these things, I've done a lot of research, and they really do. They really sincerely want to overcome anxiety.
Yeah.
First, the attitude, as I said, is like anxiety is an enemy that they need to fight with. It doesn't work this way. So within the family constellations, the first thing we do is to see anxiety as a helper, the overprotective mother, right?
Mm.
Because it's trying to do something for us. And just doing this gives us a definitely different perception, different perspective. And
Yes.
when you see it in a different light, it's like, oh, okay, so you're here to help me. And then it turns out it's not helping you only, it's also helping the others in your own family system, right?
Mm.
So during the constellation, when it's addressed, they realize what's happening. Yet when they come, they may have questions. They may be very skeptic, like myself. The first time I experienced family constellations, like, what is this? And yet you experience it, you cannot really not see it. You cannot ignore it. There's no way, because you sense it in your being. The beauty is when you sense it, you know what you know. And regardless of what others say, you know that something happened there. So as long as well as the symptoms that they have, it's a bit like a detective work. So I have to work for watch out for the clues.
Yeah.
I had to ask. So there are some obvious questions like, is there any exclusions happened in your family history? Now they may know, they may not know. And sometimes they may not regard an exclusion as an exclusion. Let's say if there's a murderer in the family, of course he'll be excluded, right? He or she. No, there are some universal rules, invisible universal rules, I should say, that we observe in family constellation therapy. There are three main rules, and these are very important. So if it's not being observed, I see that there are some other type of ancestral works done. It may give a resolution to the client, but it doesn't resolve the family dynamics. So again, if you're in the line, you may take yourself out of the line somehow, but it gets passed on to the other person.
The line is still there.
Yeah, the line is always there. So in order to break it in there, so it doesn't affect you or the others, these rules has to be observed. And when we do it, then they see the effects. So they may not know who's been excluded, or they may have a not so right idea about the exclusion itself. And it's not just the exclusion. If there are tragedies happen in the family system, almost always it has to be reflected. So in a way, it repeats itself in a similar way, or it may have different effects, not only in anxiety, but in other areas of the life too.
Yeah.
Any wrongdoings, any injustices. So there are many things. So the initial session is usually a lot of questions. It's like a detective work. And I build the family line, the mother's line, the father's line, goes all the way up. And when you see it, it is more meaningful. They also realize it. And then when we put it into work, then yes.
And so is this process done, conversationally, or is it done, in a relaxed state, or is deep trance or hypnosis required for family constellations?
It's not hypnosis. We can call it a certain type of trance, but they don't need to go into trance. It's more phenomenological and experiential work. So what happens is, when client comes to us, let's say we have no clue and they have no clue. We don't know where it's coming from. They don't know anything about the family history. So what I usually do is I tell my client, if I'm working with people, which during the COVID times I do privately, if I'm working with people, so it's a group of people, so the client picks up a rep for himself, herself, one for mother, one for father, and one for the anxiety. And as soon as they pick up a person and they put their hands on their shoulders, you're myself, or you my mother, or you my father, or you're my anxiety. That person, the representative, the stand-in, stands in the center, and it's like, oh, something's going on. So they relax themselves, they keep breathing deeply, and then as soon as they get in touch with whatever's coming through, they open their eyes, and what they say is not in their control anymore. It's not like channeling, they are still there, they're perfectly aware of that. But it's like there's this urge to express this emotion, or there is this sense that you cannot really deny. It has to be expressed. That's the main thing of the family constellations.
And so expressed on the behalf of the family member.
Yes, expression and acknowledgement. That's really important. And when I do work privately, it's a bit different. It works wonderfully well. So nobody has to know, because family secrets has to be out during the constellations, right? So I usually go with the floor anchors. It can be paper, it can be felt pieces. So, or it can be models. You can actually see the models over there.
Oh, yeah.
Or it can also be, or it can also be done just mentally within your mind. So with the floor anchors, I usually use that. And as soon as the client picks one as themselves and puts on the floor, there is this knowing field, the morphogenetic field we called, is there right at that time, as soon as a representative is picked. And then we put one for anxiety, one for father, one for mother. And as soon as we put it there, just by the direction and that they're facing and the position in relation to themselves, it gives a lot of clues. And when the client steps on the anxiety after stepping on themselves, stepping in as themselves, and then onto anxiety, it is very interesting. So anxiety usually first clings on the client, and then when it looks around, it either goes to the mother or the father. Then we know which line to work with. And then there comes the other reps, other family members. So each one of them has a feeling. It's usually what I see with the anxiety is that there are two conflicting emotions and two conflicting, we can say, identities happening, like the perpetrator and the victim. So the thing is, with the constellation, observing the universal laws, we have to allow place for both of them.
Yeah.
In one of the examples, can I give an example?
Absolutely, please do. This is fascinating.
Yeah. So, for example, with a client of mine, she was experiencing anxiety. She was battling with anxiety for a very long time. She had no place to go, and she came to me. And when we started the constellation, it was very obvious that I think it was her grandfather's first wife, which was like a family secret. Turns out she had some mental health issues, and she actually drowned her baby in the bathroom.
Oh, wow.
And because she wasn't fit, she didn't get charged, right? And grandfather splits with her, but the baby was gone. And grandfather chose to just forget about it, because that's what we do, right? It's so painful, we forget about it. We also do that to the miscarriages, abortions, stillbirths. It's very painful.
Yeah.
But we don't know the consequences on us or on the others. So what happened then, the baby is there, unacknowledged. The mother is there, the mother is the murderer, and the baby is the victim, right? But that's within the family. Even though my client had only half blood because of her grandfather, still got affected. So she had this anxiety. As soon as we placed a representative for the baby and for the mother, and the emotions there worked out, anxiety went directly back to the baby and held her. So the anxiety's aim was to get the baby known. So we gave the baby a name. And the baby started feeling peaceful. Finally, we placed the mother, well, the mother is still having the mental issues, of course, back then. So what we did was we put a healthy mother and a disturbed mother remain there as the one who drowned the baby.
Mm.
And as soon as we put the healthy mother, baby turned to the mother and it's like, mother. And the mother is like, oh, my baby, and there is love. So we always bring out love and justice with the family constellations. As soon as we did that, grandfather was able to see what was happening and he embraced. And then the other wife, the second wife, saw and respected. So it came on to the client and she was like, wow, that's unbelievable. And that was the last day she experienced anxiety.
Fascinating. Yeah. Absolutely fascinating. And I think, you know, logically, we want a logical, conscious explanation for things. But at the same time, I think this is a perfect example that the problem is not necessarily conscious, or else it wouldn't be a problem anymore, because we'd fix it, we'd change it, we'd address it at the conscious level and be done with it. So I think this is a perfect example of how family constellations work at the subconscious level and at you know, generations that we're not actually aware of, issues that we're not aware of, circumstances and events that we have no conscious awareness of until they are brought to conscious awareness and dealt with.
Yeah. For that,
so
you have to allow.
I have to allow it and also be open to it, because you know, like I mentioned before, this is hearing this is out there, and I can appreciate the listeners who are listening to this. But at the same time, you know, if what you've experienced and what you've been through and the therapies that you've potentially gone through hasn't helped, then I encourage you to be open to other modalities and other reasonings for experiencing what you're experiencing. So Gamze, you know, I'm really eager and curious, and I really want to share with our listeners more about family constellations and how, you know, that how they can do it potentially for themselves or with you. You know, what are the steps? How you know, how can we actually incorporate some of these tools into our day-to-day when someone is experiencing anxiety or stress, or you know, has that nagging feeling, doesn't know where it's coming from. So what can we do?
Yeah. So first of all, the most effective way is to do it when you're not having the anxiety attack, right?
Yeah. And that's good to know.
Yeah, you have to be in a neutral mood.
It's like trying to meditate if you're having a panic attack. It doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
Yes, zen. No, it doesn't work.
Yeah. So if you're in a neutral state, then you can certainly do that. What you can do is you can just close your eyes and you can focus on the anxiety, right? So as you focus on the anxiety, you can just see it usually has like a shape, a color, or it may have a form, it may have a texture. So what you do is you actually put the anxiety into a form, and as soon as you think about it, it actually has a form. So you can see it in your mind's eye. So as soon as you put it into a form, it becomes another almost like entity. Of course, it's not an entity, but it's easier for our subconscious mind to deal with it this way. Let's put that
for it to be represented in some way.
Exactly. And then you can just bring that into your palm, bring that, let's say the representative, whatever shape it is, into your palm, make it small, and then you can just flick it. So within your closed eyes, it can be just in front of you. So it's not in you anymore. Okay? It's very important to dissociate.
Yeah, so it's not in you, so you actually, there's a mechanism to actually release it and get rid of it.
Yeah. So when you look at it, the aim is not to get rid of it at this point. You can do it, but then again, we're working in a constellation, so it's not only us who we want to cover, but our next generations too, right? So for this sake, we go on. So what we do is, as soon as it's there in a safe distance, if you're feeling like overwhelming feeling, you can put like a safe glass or something to make yourself secure, right? It's there and you're here and you're safe. It's nothing new. And as soon as you do that, you can actually check why it's there. So it's like, okay, first acknowledgement, I see you, right? And you're here to do something for me. And I see that, and you have a message. What is your message? It usually gives you an indication of what the message is. You may hear, it's very weird. You have to experience, you have to surrender what's going to come, and it's better not to ignore anything. So you have to notice everything, and you just have to accept it as it comes. It may come as an image, as a word. It may come as a feeling, but it always comes. So when it comes, it's very surprising that it's usually, almost always, it is not there to hurt you. It's there to do something for you. So this realization changes everything. With these realizations, when you're looking at it, then you say, I hear you and I respect you.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's anxiety. As soon as you say that, something usually changes here. So it's not that enemy-like anymore. It changes, and sometimes it goes into the shape of somebody you know. Then you can carry on with the family constellation during the session, but of course as a person you cannot do that. So what we do is differently. Here we can release the accumulation of the transgenerational trauma. So what we do is, first to start with, you announce yourself as bowing to the anxiety as I am this and this. I'm Gamze Cassandra Evren, and my mother is this person, my father is this person, my grandmother, my grandfather from my mother's side and from my father's side. So it's like you're acknowledging all your roots, right? You're not just one person, but you're coming with the whole package. They're in it too. So if you don't know the names, you could
draw this, couldn't you? Or draw a representation of all those people.
Yeah, certainly. So if you don't know the names, sometimes it happens, you just think, because you have a grandmother, you have a grandfather on both sides because you're here, right? Even if you've been conceived like an egg donor or sperm donor, still you have a biological mother and father and others. Yes. So after you acknowledge this, what happens is you invite your ancestors. So within your closed eyes, in your mind, you just say that, okay, I'm inviting my mother, my father, their parents, and parents' parents, and parents' parents. So everybody comes into picture. It's a lot of people. Okay, it's very crowded.
Whole stadium.
Yeah. So you don't have to go all the way back. Of course, you cannot do that, but you do it for a few generations long. And when you do this, the anxiety is standing right at the center, in front of you, and behind them is your mother and father and their parents. So then you turn to anxiety, you say, I have been carrying this anxiety all my life, and some of them doesn't belong to me. Now I want to return it back to the source. And you bow to anxiety. Yeah, this is very amazing. At this point, anxiety usually turns and looks who is related to. And then because you don't know, and because you're not a facilitator, that's like a general thing that you can do, and it still works really good. And then you can just picture in your mind that whoever is in that line, in those two lines, are one by one coming to get their own pieces from your anxiety. Magic. So anxiety keeps changing shape all the time. Yes. They take whatever they belong to them, and they thank you and thank the anxiety and go back. Because whatever is a burden to you is because it doesn't belong to you.
Yes.
But that's what they are lacking of. And as soon as they receive it, it makes them stronger. So it's a win-win.
And it's what we mentioned before, it's not about getting rid of it. You're reframing that to, no, anxiety is actually returning to where it belongs to, and it's not you.
Yes.
Very clever. Very
Yeah.
clever.
So that works really well. And when that happens, when everybody receives their own parts and they go back to their own places, usually, most of the time, there is no anxiety left. Then that's it,
All the parts
right?
have been taken.
And if there is something left, then you look at it, it's usually very tiny. You look at it and you say, okay, I'm willing to work with you.
Yeah.
Now I can work with you. And I'm here and I see that you're here to help me. And this is the proof. So I'm willing to hear you. Okay, that changes. This is really good. And they usually find peace within. And because the bulk of it is out, then they can work if they want cognitively and with the other subconscious modalities. And there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely. And then room to move and to achieve what it is that they want in place of the anxiety.
Yes.
Fascinating. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much, Gamze, for coming and sharing this fascinating area of I'm going to say it's now becoming science as we learn more and more about it, as we are expanding the research and delving into how those intergenerational conflicts, burdens, issues are being handed down, through our DNA, through our energy, through our social nature as well. So thank you so much for shedding the light with us today and for giving us a demonstration of how this works. And so, Gamze, please, where can people get in touch with you for more information? Because I'm sure there is much more to learn about family constellations. And I'd love to be able to direct our listeners to you and to get in touch with you more.
Yeah, so for online groups, that's becoming very popular with the Zoom, which is making it possible to work. And also for the privates, if they are not able to get rid of it completely, that means there are some certain issues that needs to be looked at with the constellations. Then they can contact me in Inner Circle Healing. So my website is innercirclehealing.com.au. Yeah.
Fantastic. And we'll provide those details for our listeners and viewers. Thank you so much, Gamze. It's been wonderful to interview you, to listen, and to share your expertise today. So thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right, and that's all for us today. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.